Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast. It is episode 271. This week, we are going to be talking about Bloodshot Volume 1. This is the 2012 series. With me tonight to talk these comics, Mark Radulich. Mark Radulich, are you conscious, sir?
For the moment.
All right, that's good.
This is very exciting. I don't know where the rest of this podcast is going to go. I may be unconscious, I may not.
Oh, man. And joining us this evening, coming back to the Source Material Comics Podcast, Chris Armstrong, my 90s brother from another mother. How you doing, Chris? You ready to talk some Bloodshot?
Doing well. Back in action.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You've, of course, you're the co-host of the Unspoken Issues podcast, and Bloodshot comes up and you're like, hey, I'm down. So I want to ask you real quick, I mean, was this a series that you were picking up back in 2012?
Yeah, it was. When Valiant relaunched in 2012, they came back with Exo Man of War, Bloodshot, Harbinger. Those may have been the only three early titles, and I actually wasn't that interested. I was at, I believe, C2E2 that year, comic convention, one of the bigger ones in Chicago. And they had a big, Valiant launch, presence there. They had, panels and a big booth. And I went to some of the panels, and I really liked what I was hearing. So I decided to give some of those books a shot. And I really liked pretty much everything that came out for the first, 2 years through Valiant's relaunch. And Bloodshot, Exo Man of War is probably, I think, the best one. But Bloodshot would right behind it.
Mark, have you ever heard or did you ever read anything from the Valiant universe?
No, not really. Honestly, the only reason why we're doing this book is because they adapted it into a movie with Vin Diesel, which we're reviewing against Robert Winfree's will. I haven't heard him bitch this much about doing a movie in a while. But you don't even understand. He'll bitch about doing the podcast that he agreed to be on, right, a lot. And a lot of the stuff that I pick, he's like, why me? Why have you forsaken me, Lord? But he agrees to do them. This one, I've never seen him so... This is a vendetta.
Wow.
I'm afraid he's going to find the people who made this movie and murder them.
Yeah, that's a bit extreme. After reading this book, and we'll talk a little bit about that here at the end, but our expectations with the movie. But I mean, after reading the book, this is right up an action hero alley. Vin Diesel is probably, at least I think, somewhat fitted for the role. I don't know if anybody has any commentary on his acting ability, but I mean, he's been in quite a few, and he's been in quite a few action movies at least.
I was gonna say he's got the body type for the guy that they had for the way they drew the guy in the comic.
So he at least looks the part. It's going to be the acting and of course the story that we're going to get. Did they say, Mark, when you were looking up this book, did they say it was loosely based off the 2012 relaunch, or did they give any indication as to what to expect? Don't have to be spoilerific, just did they give an idea?
I'm looking it up now. I knew that when I was planning my calendar 10 years ago that I saw this and I looked to see what it was. I'm like, oh, it's a thing. It's a comic book adaptation. Intended to be the first installment in a series of films set within the Valiant Comics shared cinematic universe.
Where do they get these ideas from?
Chris, does that make your pants tight and wet?
It would if I thought any other movies were going to get made.
Supposedly, I'd seen this, and actually, I had highlighted it here. Maybe not. But I thought that I'd saw something where they were going to be doing the Harbinger Wars.
Yeah, Harbinger was supposed to come first.
Oh, really?
I believe once they got Vin Diesel on board, they scrapped that and said, let's just do Bloodshot.
Okay.
I believe the initial plan was to do Harbinger first and then Bloodshot and then a Harbinger Wars movie. Maybe it was going to be the third part.
Yeah, and Harbinger, I think, is now... Oh, my gosh. I had it in front of me. They're with a different studio. This...
Yeah, Paramount.
Okay, and Bloodshot's coming out from Sony?
Yeah, what it says here is, intended to launch a new shared cinematic universe of Valiant comic superheroes. Bloodshot was originally planned to be followed by 4 movies, a sequel, 2 films based on the comic book series Harbinger, and a culmination in a crossover titled Harbinger Wars. Initially scheduled to be the first installment in the franchise, development of Harbinger was delayed in favor of releasing Bloodshot first. In September 2019, it was announced that Harbinger would be distributed by Paramount, possibly canceling any shared universe plans with Bloodshot.
Yeah, I was going to say.
In June of 2018, it was announced that a film centered around the superhero Faith was also in development with a script by Maria Melnick. And I would like to say that I read all that without running out of breath.
He's good to podcast again, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't fucking doubt me, Jesse Starcher.
Hey, motherfucker! Listen, I have a witness who heard what was happening in the background at your fucking house, and we were worried. Like I was like, Melissa's going to be running in at any time, going, "Oh my gosh, Mark!"
If I die on a day that I'm supposed to record, I will rise from my grave like altered fucking beast. Finish the recording and finish fucking dying. Anyway, Bloodshot does not appear to be based on a specific story.
Okay.
From the comic.
All right.
As
Very
near
good.
as the wiki can tell me.
Chris, did you read any Bloodshot back in the 1990, what was it, 92, 91 era? When was it? Hold on, I got it here. It was created by writer Kelvin Van Hook and artist Yvel Goucher. I seriously butchered all that.
Sure,
but,
that's probably
1992 in Valiant Comics. So were you reading Bloodshot back in the day?
Negative. I didn't really read any Valiant books back in the 90s. I was an Image guy. And I think Valiant had been around already for a while, and I felt like I didn't know enough about the characters to jump into the middle, so I never really got into any of those. Until the relaunch, I never read hardly any Valiant stuff.
Even though I own like probably close to, I don't know, between 5 and 10 Bloodshot books from the 90s, I don't know if I can tell you anything that I remember reading in there. I think I remember reading, and they mentioned that he first appeared in the pages of the Eternal Warrior. So I think I remember seeing him and the Eternal Warrior doing a couple things together. But I honestly don't have any idea as to what his powers were. I just knew he was a superhero, looked pretty cool, and he had white skin and a big red dot on his chest. So that was about it. So this is the first time I ever really read something consecutively through with Bloodshot. The good thing is this is the 2012 relaunch, so your reboot. You're going to get at least an origin told here in these first 4 issues. Our writer Dwayne Swierczynski, pencilers Manuel Garcia with Arturo Lazzi, inks by Stefano Gaudiano, and colors by Ian Hannon. Letters by Rob Steen. So now those may change as we go through the issues, but that's what's credited here on issue 1. Yeah, Valiant Universe had a bunch of characters in it. Back in the 90s, there were a lot of universes popping up, but if you took a look at a big portion of some of the major companies back then, obviously Marvel and DC were still around. Image just beginning there in 92. Valiant was, I think they said, around in 1991 under Voyager Communications. These 4, in my opinion, were 4 of the biggest comic universes of that time, or at least of that year, 92, 93. Those are the ones I saw on my shelf the most. We just talked about on Unspoken Issues, well, I say we just did, but it was a while back, we talked about how they had ventured into video games. The Shadow Man N64 game, there was I think an Exo Man of War Iron Man game, if I remember right, that came out for PlayStation. Turok, one of the best N64 games, out there, first-person shooters. So the Valiant universe, had a pretty firm hold. Now let's talk about Bloodshot and who Bloodshot is. Bloodshot is, like I said, created by Kevin Van Hook and artist Yvel Goucher in 1992. His own series, Bloodshot Volume 1, started in 1993, initially written by Van Hook and illustrations by Don Perlin. That concluded in 1996 after 52 issues. Valiant was then bought by Acclaim Entertainment, who rebooted the Valiant universe in 97, written by Len Kaminsky and the art by Sal Velluto. Then the series concludes at that point in 1998 after 16 issues. And then in 2004, the rights go back from Acclaim to Valiant Entertainment. The Valiant universe is then rebooted here in 2012 with a new version of Bloodshot appearing in Volume 3, written by the creative team I just gave you there. Now, Bloodshot himself is a violent... Now, this is all coming from Valiant.fandom.com. A violent but heroic super soldier with nanites in his blood that give him special powers. These powers include superhuman physicality, the ability to regenerate from any wound if he consumes enough matter, the ability to alter his body shape, and the ability to communicate with machines. So there you go. There is the lowdown on Bloodshot. I'm going to go ahead and do a real quick synopsis of the first 2 issues. Oh, real quick piece of trivia. Chris, you might find this pretty interesting. A Bloodshot video game for the PC and PlayStation was in the works in 1997 by Iguana Entertainment, but was canceled due to delays. The team involved moved on to work on Shadow Man, and Bloodshot would appear in that game as an unlockable character.
That's cool.
Yeah. So let's do 2 issues here. We'll break and we'll talk about some of the stuff we thought of in the first 2, and then we'll do the last 2 final thoughts. We'll get out of here. So here we go. Synopsis for the first 2 issues. Our main character here, we find out, is a guy by the name of Ray, who's sent on a mission by his commanding officer, Hutch, who appears to be, I could be wrong here, but at least the appearance is it felt like some type of government agency. So they send Ray into Afghanistan to rescue an old friend. So he kisses his wife and his kids goodbye and jumps out of a plane, but is immediately incinerated after being hit with a bomb, like you do. While the Afghan soldiers store the burnt body, something amazing happens. Ray is still alive and regenerates, as we find out that he is the nanite-infused soldier Bloodshot. Now alive and on the inside, Bloodshot is able to morph his face to blend in and attacks the compound from within. But when he opens a vault where his friend is supposed to be, he is greeted by his son and immediately shot down. Awakening in a lab hooked to machinery, Bloodshot is told by a Mr. Curich that his home life has been a series, well, actually his whole life has been a series of implanted memories from an entity called Project Rising Spirit, and he, Mr. Curich, is there to free him. Initiating the program, Bloodshot is stunned to see what Mr. K is saying is true, and he is shocked and escapes the lab. Back in touch with Hutch as he's on the run, he is told that an extraction team is on the way, and when they land, Bloodshot is again shot, killed, and loaded into a helicopter. Now, issue 1 was called Dunk Tank. Issue 2 is called Get Your Gun, and this is where we start off where Bloodshot is captured and on his way back to PRS, Project Rising Spirit. Bloodshot's able to escape his captors. The only problem is that the ghosts of his many implanted memories still haunt him as the nanites communicate to Bloodshot through their image. As the plane he is on crashes in the desert, it's either a plane or a helicopter, I can't remember. I think it's a plane. As the plane he is on crashes in the desert, PRS wants both Bloodshot and Mr. Curich dead and dispatches a team to make sure that happens. Mr. Curich dives deep into some of the memories they nabbed from Bloodshot before he escaped and learns that Bloodshot was sent to kill innocents at a PRS ultra-classified suburb. However, PRS modified what Bloodshot was seeing, making him believe he was on a heroic mission to stop a terrorist virus. In an ambulance, Bloodshot's body is revived and he is slowly regenerating but must consume in order to regenerate faster. Stopping the ambulance, Bloodshot gets out and devours, this is completely off panel, you don't see him sit there and eat it, but he devours a cow and tells the ambulance driver he needs to be taken home. Meanwhile, PRS, Project Rising Spirit, has a plan to use a young girl who they have imprisoned in something called the nursery as a weapon against Bloodshot. So there's our first 2 issues. Mark, let's start with you, buddy. I mean, here's your introduction to Bloodshot. You get these first 2 issues. What are your thoughts?
I liked how the story started. We have an honest-to-God mystery here. We have an unreliable narrator. He doesn't know what's real because, when we fade in, here's a guy. He's got to go on one last mission, and he's got the girl at home and the child, and, oh, but you said you wouldn't go back out there, and it's, that's all a lie. Or is it? We don't know. Mm-hmm. And so the story really is kind of like a Memento type deal where, he's trying to figure out how he got to be in the state that he's in. He's just kind of pulling on strings to try to figure out, try to get information, try to solve this mystery of how he got to be in the condition that he's in. And he doesn't even know that he's got the powers that he's got, which I also found interesting. I know we're not all the way there yet, but I'll tell you that I wish, normally the average amount of issues we read per trade, per source material is about 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. And 4, I needed another 2 issues of this. I don't feel like I got any resolution to anything. It's established he's unreliable. It's established he doesn't know all his powers. He's kind of learning them as he goes. And what more else he can do is a mystery. We don't know. We don't know fully what the villain's plot is because, they captured Bloodshot momentarily to get the location of the lost city of Atlantis or whatever that was. The city underneath, it's the city underground.
Yeah.
And, but we don't know what the significance of it is. So there's so many balls in the air right now and there's so much mystery. So it's definitely got me hooked, but even,
mission accomplished.
Yeah, no. I guess it was like 25 issues, this thing, according to the website that I read this off of. But I honestly, like, I have to keep going. Like, I want to know what happens next. There's no natural resolution to this story. They just kind of get out of the immediate jam that they're in.
You say that the 4 issues was just kind of like a taste. And I honestly thought when we were jumping into this, before I actually looked it up, I was like, well, certainly it's going to be 6 issues. I read 5 issues in one, like probably within an hour to an hour and a half at the most. These are really quick reads, and I could just imagine how small this trade paperback is. It's got to be pretty tiny.
When Valiant launched, I think one of their initiatives was going to be when those first trades come out, they were going to try and keep them at $10.
Okay.
That way people could jump right in and like, well, I didn't jump in with the first issue, but the first trade's only $10. I think all of the first volumes of all the Valiant trades were $10, so they had to keep the page count down probably for that reason. So I think they were all designed to have the first 4 issues could be like a little taste of what each series was going to be.
That makes sense.
And I think it worked out well because, I mean, I agree with Mark. Look, you don't get a whole lot here, but it does kind of leave you wanting more, and it gets to a stopping point, where they can launch the next story arc from.
Yeah. Mark, do you have any comments on the violence that happens in these first 2 issues? I mean, there's some blood and guts.
You've heard of Totally 80s Pat? Well, this is a totally 90s comic.
Amen.
Hey, kids, do you like violence? Do you like 9-inch nails jammed into your eyelids? Well, read a Valiant comic. Maybe Image.
Valiant was really known as was more driven by the writing and story arcs. But Bloodshot pops up, after the Image launch had happened. It almost felt like a Valiant response to like the extreme, the Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee era of Image comics, and that kind of shows through. I mean, I haven't really read many of the old, 90s Bloodshot stuff. Just the character itself, like you look at the covers of those early Bloodshot issues. We have a gun-toting, assassin named Bloodshot, and I think that's kind of reflected in these issues too. It's kind of like reading old Bloodstrike comics from Image.
Somebody is getting a limb removed at least once per issue. Somebody is losing an arm, or our first introduction to this guy who believes he's jumping in to save his buddy from these Afghanis. He's in the air and gets hit with a missile. And I mean, in gruesome effect, he's kind of like blown, I wouldn't say apart, but he's definitely hurting. You can tell there's chunks of him missing in that shot when he's dropping down from the.
Can I jump in here?
Go ahead.
I'll tell you the one negative, the one problem with all of that is, and it's kind of the Superman issue, where no matter what you do to Bloodshot, nothing kills him.
He has his limits, though. I mean,
well, no, what I'm saying is it's hard for me to act viscerally to the gore in this when it's not real gore. It's okay. A better example is Wolverine.
Okay.
Short of ripping off his adamantium from his bones, or beheading him or something like that. My problem with Wolverine has always been you could rip him limb from limb, and or another good one would be Deadpool, and he just regenerates. Mm-hmm. And so some of the imagery associated with Deadpool and Wolverine can be kind of gross because they're losing limbs and they're beat up and they're bloody, but that none of it matters because they're going to regenerate and they're going to be fine and we're going to move on. I'm not as squeamish as all that.
Yeah.
There are certain things I look at and it's like, whoa, that's unpleasant. But if the idea is, look at how much blood and guts there is in this, it's like, they'll be fine. Put a Band-Aid on that. The Nanites got it.
Nanites got that covered. They got it covered.
You see what I'm saying? So, like, if the intended effect is to give the reader a visceral reaction, this kind of misses the mark because they overpowered him.
I want to say it's gore for the sake of gore, but that kind of...
It's also not just Bloodshot that gets their arms ripped off.
Oh, yeah. There's actual human beings that are suffering the wrath of Bloodshot. Specifically, the one that sticks out to me is that pilot who comes out and he tries to stop.
Literally has his arm ripped off. Okay, that was gross.
Yeah.
That I had a visceral reaction to.
Bones sticking out and everything.
Yeah.
Good. But that was a normal dude.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Mark. I mean, really, in the first issue, he's burnt to a crisp. He's a corpse laying on a freaking table, and he's burnt to a crisp, and he's able to regenerate because of the nanites. Now, the nanites have they obviously have some limitations. They have to be able to consume matter in order to continue to do this over and over. So there's a potential for the nanites just to run out of energy in order to do it. But obviously, there's Bloodshot can go to some extreme deaths or apparent deaths before he would actually run into some issues. Chris Armstrong, first 2 issues. What's your thoughts, man?
I mean, kind of like you guys have already said, the thing that really stands out is the violence. I kind of was expecting this to be the case. Like, there's not a whole lot really for me to say. Like we've already said, the story is a little thin. We don't get a whole lot, especially in the first 2 issues. It's mostly just like action sequence after action sequence.
Yeah.
But one thing that stood out was the image of Bloodshot when he wakes up after, he's been blown away, and he's talking to the doctors, and he's got all these cables and wires in his head.
Yeah.
That's just like, it's kind of like an extreme version of like, you imagine somebody getting hooked up to a machinery in a sci-fi comic. Like, it's normally like The Matrix, like you just shove something in the back of their neck, but like he's got like hundreds of cables almost. And he's bleeding everywhere. It's just really, it's kind of like a horror show. Mm-hmm. More so even than like when he's getting blown apart.
Man, that first issue, I'm just kind of the second issue. The art style's neat because they do the memories like in a different art style. And oh my gosh, the poor kid, like in his memory when he's playing football with his son, who decides to jump over a picket fence and impales himself in front of his dad on the picket fence. You're just like, oh my gosh. And of course, this is a false memory that he is waking up and realizing at this point in time that, this stuff it's all fake. Just like Mark said, he's the unreliable narrator where you don't know what is real and what's not. Yeah,
I like the shift in art styles too. Like the memories I'm not sure which artist is handling which, panels, but the memories, there's like a clean, it's a much cleaner art style, and there's like a smooth, almost like a CGI like texture over like the pencil art.
It's hard to describe it, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Looking at it, it doesn't look natural. And the CGI thing, that would, if is actually what is happening, that kind of ties in with what's going on in Bloodshot's head, because, it's all virtual memories. Yeah. All right. Well, if there isn't anything else, we'll get into 3 and 4 real quick. All right. Issue 3, Blast from the Past. Using his nanites to pinpoint a source of the image of his wife, Bloodshot has the ambulance driver take him to a house matching the last location of a lady by the name of Ashley Spellman. And just real quick to let everybody know, I'm going to be referring to the ambulance driver as the ambulance driver until the very, 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 very end. So be ready. Bloodshot gets taken to a house of a lady by the name of Ashley Spellman, who matches the face of at least one of his implanted memories of his wife. So he's doing a little bit of investigating. He learns that Mr. Curich used her and other likenesses from his days at high school and other interactions to, I guess, be the basis of these visual memories that he's implanted in Bloodshot's head. Which, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but Mr. Curich is a defected scientist from Project Rising Spirit. So, yeah, he's defected from PRS. He's trying to now help Bloodshot. I assume he didn't agree with what was going on there. PRS has now sent an operative named Dodge to confront Bloodshot, and Dodge has taken with him the young girl who apparently can release a large EMP, which is the perfect weapon against a nanite-filled soldier. Bloodshot is made aware Dodge is on his way and heads him off outside of town. However, Dodge has the young girl unleash the EMP, causing Bloodshot to wreck his vehicle. Crawling out of it, Dodge walks up and shoots Bloodshot in the head. This issue, Curich also unearths the ultra-secret suburb that Mark was talking about earlier. The ultra-secret suburb underground that I think they're out in, they're out in the desert somewhere. But there's this huge city that was underground that PRS, I think, set up. And it is, as Curich finds it, he looks down and it's just completely filled with people that were dead. Now in issue 4, the final issue, Good Girl, We get to see what happened 3 years ago at what they call the Research Black Site in Atlee, Nevada. That's where we were at there. So this is the one that Curich is currently at. Apparently, the nanites began to consume everything in its path, and when they called for help, Bloodshot was sent in, indiscriminately killing everyone there. This was the first time the young girl, codenamed Pulse, was used to bring down Bloodshot. And now it appears she is about to help do it again. Dodge is about to squeeze the trigger one more time, but is stopped by the ambulance driver who is holding a sniper rifle that Bloodshot had earlier. She makes Dodge drop the gun. This gives the recovering Bloodshot the moment he needs to shoot 2 of the guards, while Pulse uses her powers to kill Dodge and run off. Bloodshot is intent to find Pulse, and in order to gain her help, he agrees to help the ambulance driver heal her war-wounded brother. So that was a little convoluted, but basically Bloodshot says, hey, I need you to drive me and help me find this girl. She just took off running. And the ambulance driver says, yeah, if you do me a favor, could you help my brother? He was missing a few limbs, and she had watched Bloodshot regenerate, obviously, and thought that maybe he could help her out. Now, Pulse makes her way to a hospital and hijacks a helicopter to escape. But before she boards, she brings on the ambulance driver and who she believes is the pilot of the helicopter. But, of course, it's actually Bloodshot. After confronting her in the helicopter, Bloodshot assures Pulse that he just wants her help because he plans to take down PRS, and he believes she can assist. Oh, and the ambulance driver's name is Kara. There you go. We go through 4 issues and we don't have any idea who this girl is until finally at the end. It's so funny because she goes, not that anybody asked, but my name's Kara. That's the end of that. So there you go. First 4 issues. Mark Radulich, what were your final thoughts here?
I'm sorry, I skipped a little bit ahead. This is going to be a little bit of repetition, but basically, I thought we were off to the beginning of a nice mystery. We have a nice little group formed between Pulse, Bloodshot, and the driver. I'm the driver. I don't remember if it was the second half or the first half where he goes to the house and he starts putting together that the memories that they gave him were just bits and pieces of the scientist's life that mostly were meaningless. It was just like this was the batch of information he used to create false memories. They were nothing more than that, which I thought, imagine, perception is reality. So imagine you believe something to be completely true. And as it turns out, it's not only a lie, but it's just random nonsense that somebody threw together for an ulterior purpose.
Yeah,
that's rough. That's rough. Yeah, that's crushing. It definitely did its job. I would continue with this series. Weirdly enough, on the site that I was using, there's a whole section that's missing. It jumps from 13 to the 20s.
It's got to have something to do with it. Probably turns into something. Like it might turn into Bloodshot and something else, and then goes back to Bloodshot. I saw that too.
It becomes Bloodshot and Hardcore, but I think that's a totally different series. It's been a while since I've read them, so I can't really remember the reading order. Well,
where it does that, it goes issue 13. And then issue 14, let's see what it says at the end here. It says at the end of issue 13, it says next, Bloodshot number 0. That feels awful 90s. So let's go to issue 0. And then issue 0, what do they say here? Here's what it says. It says every mission is someone's last, coming next month in Bloodshot and Hardcore number 14. So I think that is exactly what happens. It goes from Bloodshot 13 to Bloodshot and Hardcore 14. So
yeah, I'm looking. I don't know if either one of you use Hoopla. I think Jesse, we've talked about it, but if you use Hoopla, it's got the first 6 volumes on Hoopla, so you can read those for free.
Very nice, very nice. Hoopla's a lifesaver. Saved Alexis there last week.
Harbinger Wars is also a crossover with Harbinger and Bloodshot, which is really cool.
Yeah, I've heard that's really good. I never got into the reboot, and I've heard not just you, Chris, but I've heard a couple other people tell me that it was actually worth reading some of the stuff that was coming out at that point.
Yeah, I liked everything I had read through the first 3 years of the Valiant relaunch. There were Shadow Man wasn't so great, but that was the only one that was, and it was still good. It just wasn't as good as the other stuff. But I really liked everything they were doing for the first 3 years, and then I kind of lost track just because there were so many books to keep up with. And I've heard that it's kind of struggled in the last few years because another company bought it a few years ago, and I've heard just from what I've seen on message boards and in groups and stuff on Facebook that it's not quite as good as it once was. But eventually I'll catch up on that stuff.
Chris, I mean, these are the first 4 issues of Bloodshot 2012. I mean, your overall thoughts, anything else to stick out to you from the story?
It's super violent, in a really entertaining. It's almost like an extreme version of like an 80s action movie, Universal Soldier, which that's a 90s action movie, I guess. But in that kind of vein, it kind of gets better, I think, from here as far as where the series goes.
Yeah, like I said, I hopped into issue 5 and then realized, well, I don't have to go this far. And issue 5, issue 5 was, I mean, it was still good. I wanted to see because, at the end of issue 4, they're gearing up to go at least confront Project Rising Spirit. So, something had to be, I wanted to see who are these people? What are these people behind this? What's going on? And you wanted to see the resolution of that. And I think like at the end of issue 5, there's this, they're getting ready to run into some kind of a team, another like, I don't know if it's a supervillain team or a team that's been put together by PRS to try and stop Bloodshot. So, well, yeah, I had a good time, man. This is something that really made me go, okay, well, I know a little bit about Bloodshot, at least enough to probably feel dangerous. Because I think the core elements are there. The nanites, the fact that he can regenerate. Just like you said, Chris, it's an action movie. That's really all this is. I think that's why, obviously, it's probably fit for the screen. If so long as who knows what the movie is going to bring us, but I would hope that they would just kind of stick with the, what is known with Bloodshot. He's an assassin. He's confused. He's got false memories. All this stuff makes for, at least a decent action flick. So are you excited for the movie, Chris? Are you going to go watch it?
Excited is not the word I would use.
Oh, no. I haven't watched the trailer, so I have no idea what's going on with, what to expect. Are you on your laptop right now, Chris?
I am, but I've got my iPad here too.
Okay. All right, let's try something real quick. Mark Radulich.
Yes, sir.
I want to do a watch together real quick. 3, 2, 1. Chris, are you seeing this? All right.
This should also explain why I sent you the music that I did.
Okay.
So one of the things you notice right away is that they did not make him silver.
No, well, at least here he isn't.
Well, no, he's Bloodshot in this trailer. You'll notice he just punched a wall and they showed the nanites.
Oh, okay.
And you'll notice he's not silver.
No, he is not.
They play around a lot with the idea that was in the comic about the false memories and what's real and what isn't. That's directly out of the book.
Oh, shit. I knew he was going to get some slow-mo. Wasn't that the guy that did Iron Man 3? Was it Iron Man 2 or 3?
Yeah, he was in Iron Man 3.
Okay.
He was in Memento. He's awesome, really. He's in a lot of really good stuff.
What is his name?
Guy Pearce.
That's right, Guy Pearce.
He's one of the reasons I have hope for the movie, but he's in a lot of bad movies too, so it doesn't really do a whole lot.
All right, so Chris, you read Bloodshot, right? You read through the series. What is the thing with the spider arms?
That's just a character that's from. I thought he was a Harbinger villain, but maybe he showed up in the Bloodshot. It's been a long time since I've read him, so but he's part of a team. He might even be part of the hardcore team.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, he's one of the villains. I was pretty pleased to see him show up in the trailer, so I know he's going to be in the movie. And it looks like there are parts of the movie where Vin Diesel is going to look more like the comic book Bloodshot, with no hair, obviously, but...
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's an action flick. What is
I don't
think
it looks bad. I just don't have a whole lot of faith in it for whatever reason.
Listen, I just saw because I was doing some research earlier, and if you type in the word Bloodshot, once again, folks, the movie industry has taken over. You can't find the comic book link unless you look 5 pages deep on Google. But there were plenty of interviews where Vin Diesel's trying to say that this is going to open up the Valiant cinematic universe.
Good. I tell you, most cinematic universes have worked out really well since Marvel got their thing going.
Yeah, for sure.
They have been very successful.
That dark one took off.
Yeah, it did. Like the Challenger.
Oh no! Oh, I'm trying to think of a good Valiant property that I'd like to see. I mean, Bloodshot's cool. Look, if it's action packed, we get some great special effects. You can do Bloodshot pretty easily, and that's probably why they kind of stayed with Bloodshot, because that's pretty street level. I mean, you go into like Exo Man of War, you obviously don't want to start with hardcore because that's a team, and you're probably going to have to get into a lot more special effects and money when it comes to that. But we'll see. You never know. Hey, there wasn't a whole lot of hope for Sonic either, and Sonic the Hedgehog kicks some ass. So Bloodshot may be the new thing. This has been our coverage of Bloodshot 1 through 4. Let's go ahead. We'll get into plugs. Chris Armstrong, what is the plan, Stan?
You can find me on Twitter at BirdiMan34, and you can find me about every other week on Unspoken Issues podcast with Jesse, where we cover 90s comics, one issue at a time.
That's right. Mark Radulich, what's on the schedule, buddy?
All right. Tomorrow, against Robert Winfrey's will, we will be reviewing Bloodshot, the movie. Wednesday, it's Code Orange underneath on the Metal Hammer of Doom. Thursday will be in honor of St. Patrick's Day, which would be tomorrow. Myself and Sean Comer will be putting the Boondock Saints on trial. Also, speaking of St. Patrick's Day, the Michael Conlon versus Belmar Preciado on ESPN. Myself and a very surly Robert Winfrey. That's a great night, by the way. I'm going to have him review a movie he didn't want to review in the first place and hate and has been doing nothing but griping about, and then make him review a gimmicky, not great boxing card with a guy who only fights on St. Patrick's Day.
Wow. Why are you doing this to him? What has he ever done to you, sir?
Listen, this it's St. Patrick's Day, Jesse. St. Patrick's Day is for corned beef, Guinness beer. We all know that. Chris knows what I'm talking about. Corned beef, Guinness beer, pinching people, wearing green, and Irish boxing. Come on now.
Okay.
This begs to be covered.
All right. I won't deny it. Anything else there, sir?
No. Well, maybe. This past Saturday, in theory, we covered Shakur Stevenson versus Miguel Mariachi.
Oh, yes.
or as his family calls him, Miguel Mariaga. Okay. Last week on the Source Jail podcast, me, you, and Alexis Haina got together. We did Harley and Ivy Meet Betty and Veronica. Mm-hmm. Myself, Robert Winfrey, and Alexis Haina reviewed Onward. Wednesday, Body Count was in the house.
Yes, sir.
Myself and the Podsman reviewed Elimination Chamber. I don't know if Chris Armstrong watches wrestling, but according to Twitter, we're not allowed to have bad guys anymore. Did you know that, Chris?
I did not realize. I don't watch wrestling, so.
Oh, okay. So this whole bit's going to be lost on you, and I should just keep going. Got it. Check.
Go for it.
Myself and David Wright reviewed the new first half of the Harley Quinn Season 1, first 13 episodes of the Harley Quinn animated series on DC Universe. So all that right there in the archives, and all of what's to come here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network.
Very good. Mark Radulich, the Nanites have repaired you enough to do this podcast and finish it out. Chris Armstrong, I guarantee you we'll be doing an Unspoken Issues here pretty soon. For Chris Armstrong, for Mark Radulich, I am Jesse Starcher. We will be talking to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for joining us. Do not forget to subscribe to our new home by punching in W2M Network on just about any podcast platform. to get all of our content into your audio feed. Also, give a like to the Rattlich in Broadcasting Network and W2Mnet.com Facebook page in order to stay on top of everything that we have to offer. If you'd like to follow the Source Material Podcast on social media, just follow @SourceMattCast on Twitter, and we are on Facebook @Source Material Comics Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please feel free to share. We look forward to entertaining you again soon.